Walk in and you turn it right on.
Good evening. Welcome back to the budget workshop. And thank you. We got down as far as the education, got through the community college and the school system on Monday night. So we're down to public safety, and I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So we start tonight with public safety and begin with the sheriff's office. The sheriff is here tonight, and Chief Deputy, if you'll have any specific questions. But we'll start with the administrative and operations because we break that out separately. We have operations, and then we have the jail and then 911 communications. So if you'll draw your attention to your large spreadsheet that we have that you break out on the page and what we've been working off of, or you can go directly to their page, which is 260. So the change in this, it's the overall budget on that side is about 15.6% higher than what it was last year, but we did add the SRO funding back in, so that entire amount to fund the SROs is back in that budget. It was not in the budget prior year, so that's why you see that larger increase. If you look on page 260, obviously, we cover the personnel, and as you'll recall, in the budget ordinance, the way the budget ordinance is written, the sheriff's office is restricted on both its personnel for FTEs, but it's also restricted on its line item expenditure in that we group those up. The budget, the board directed a year or two ago to roll those up and show them in the budget ordinance as personnel and benefits, and then operational and capital. So they're restricted on those funds in the budget ordinance itself. They can move money around within the operational line items as they need to, but overall they would have to come back to the board if they moved things outside of that. So if you're on page 260, you'll see the personnel is what it is because we cover that. And of course, as we always do, we fully fund all of our personnel costs. We don't look at those and say, well, we might have, we may have some vacancies. We don't do that. We feel like we have to fully fund all those positions, whether they're full or not, simply because the finance officer has to pre-audit that and certify that there are funds available. So we make sure that the funds are available for all those positions. So that's fully funded at 4.4 million. Benefits is 1.9. The operating is 1.6. So you'll see that that's actually down a little bit from prior year. Prior year was 1.61, and the sheriff's office brought that operating budget down to 1.60. The capital is slightly up, about 44,000 up, but overall, you'll see the budget is up, and the majority of that is the SRO funding. Happy to answer any questions, or the sheriff or the chief deputy can certainly answer any questions as you may have based on page 261, which is their line item budget.
All right, the floor is open for questions.
I can start.
Okay, John?
We've got nothing in the line for fitness incentives. Have you done away with that this year?
Hey, good afternoon. Yes, sir, we have gotten rid of the fitness incentive as far as budgeting for it, but Blue Cross Blue Shield will pay a portion of it, so we're doing it that way. I think they have a $20 copay.
I don't know.
Yes, sir. I think it's 20.
They're with Blue Cross Blue Shield and
Yes, state health plan. Yes,
So
sir.
that's correct. So there are benefits that come through state health plan.
Right.
I think it's called Blue Options, and they have vendors that they have priority service with, and you get a discount. They'll discount your membership in certain opportunities. So
so it's sort of like the silver shoes for us.
It is. Part of the issue we were having with it,
Slippers, not shoes.
when we opened it, a lot of people would sign up for it, so we paid it up front, and then they go no hours throughout the year. At least this way here, the ones that are motivated to go will go forward and do it on their insurance.
Okay. And I just noted under uniforms, it looks like you're going to be projected this year at 136,000 and you budgeted 93. You think
Yes, sir. That's fine.
it's fine?
Yes, sir.
You're going to use less uniforms?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We're in good shape.
okay.
Commissioner want to give you more money, but
So,
We're
well,
good.
we'll get it from someplace else. And what is the current vehicle rotation
125,000 miles.
on everything?
Yes, sir. But we try to, some of those that may be getting closer, a little bit over that, we'll give to someone that does not put as many miles on a car. And here lately, it's been the SROs. They're in the black cars. I think we've fully transitioned patrol to the white patrol cars, finally.
Okay. Okay. And can you give us an update on the SROs in terms of staffing?
Either myself or the sheriff one.
Yeah, well, yes, sir. Hey, thanks. We're 100% on the SRO hiring,
See,
our training, taking.
You got
All the
12?
hiring's 12.
Okay.
Just sealed that up. Just recent, maybe this, the medical evaluation on one of our deputies went through yesterday, so we're 100% solid.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good report.
Yes.
how many openings you have now?
In patrol, I got
Yes.
5 openings in patrol.
Okay.
I got 3 in 911, 3 in the jail, and 2 in bailiff.
And how many did you move from your staff to SROs?
3.
Okay.
And that was at their request.
Okay.
The openings in communication, we've got 5 in background, so that'll be probably filled out of that. Same thing with detention, we've got several that are in background, some that have cleared background and that are awaiting the conditional offer. So we're in good shape. And we continue to recruit the patrol deputies, BLETs that are graduate. So we're getting a good response. In fact, the sheriff interviewed one today for patrol.
From college.
I know, sir, their school hadn't graduated yet, hadn't started yet.
We,
You got more than 3 this time?
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
we don't control that, you know.
I know you don't, but I mean, you just,
No.
I know you don't control it, but you were talking about you get to college. I mean, if you get all of them, you still.
Dan had a whole lot of luck here lately.
But,
Hopefully they'll have a full class.
but we are recruiting, we're recruiting closer to home today. And if their medical and everything goes, it's already accepted, so we're already one more hit. A prior Marine, solid background. Good job.
Okay, I've got some questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, not from 96 people, 22, 23 to 109, that reflects the increase in the SROs. And that's what I thought. It's 13 people, and that's what it should be. Okay, going over page 260, the increase in the fiscal 23-24 budget from $7,380,000 to $8,500,000. That's about a 1.2 million increase. Is most of that because the SROs transfer to yours? I thought that when we budgeted for the contract security at the schools, was that in the school budget, or where was that in the budget?
Yes, that was a contract, so we did budget the payment to the schools for Universal.
So it was in the school's budget, not a part of,
Previously, it was,
not a part of the safety budget? Okay.
correct.
All right.
So if you go back and look at the school's budget that we have in the budget book, you'll see where it reflected that prior year.
I thought you had mentioned that
Yes,
before.
sir.
Okay, that's all I got.
You good?
Yeah.
Randy?
Will you be pursuing SRO grants and
Yes, sir. In fact, we discussed that today. There are several COPS grants and some other grants that we can use towards that.
Right. Do you have somebody that writes grants for you, or?
We do.
Okay,
We do.
good.
We've sent a couple to grant writing school. Now, these grants are more equipment, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
not personnel.
Good for you.
Everybody's good?
Can you bring us up to date on where you're at with the school security plan? I mean, did you complete your portion of that?
Yes. Our portion was completed back in last briefing, December. That's been complete. Yes, sir. Even Dr. Cheeseman has actually briefed since we completed our portion of it.
So they've had this for 4 or 5 months?
They have their recommendations
That's right.
as a result of it.
Now, what measures they've taken to take on those recommendations, I don't have that update. We've been focused on
Yeah.
a lot of things right now.
Oh, I have one more question. Okay. Have you been consulted about security for the new school that's being built?
Using that word consult, have I been used as a consultant?
No, have you been consulted about your views on security for the new school that's being
They've
built?
reached out and only asked maybe a question. but
No,
not
General,
said-
help me, but here's a,
That's right, nothing like that.
okay.
Everybody else good? Okay, Brian?
So if you move on to page 263, you'll pick up the jail under the Sheriff's Office division there. It has a 2.3% increase. In general, you'll see the personnel are again fully funded, the benefits are fully funded. The operating budget is down slightly from prior year. The capital is the same. But overall, we don't really typically show explanations when it's less than 5%, so it's 2.3% increase there. Chief Deputy or Sheriff can certainly answer any details you may have on their budget.
Any questions on the budget for the jail? Yes, John?
What is the difference between inmate out-of-facility services and safekeeping?
Sometimes to go to Raleigh to safekeeping in central prison, it's either got to be one of two things, either a medical or a behavioral issue. And it's really got to be severe for the behavioral part of it. But if we have maybe an inmate that has a co-conspirator, someone else that was charged in the same crime, both of them are in our jail. Sometimes we'll separate them, put one in Dare County and one in
Okay. So-
Washington County. And usually that works both ways too. Sheriffs from other counties do the same thing.
So safekeeping is Raleigh?
Yes, sir.
Out of facilities in another
Yes, sir.
county's jail?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just the classifications that we're not able to house creates those
Yeah.
medical pregnancy.
Women's prison.
You know, what I mean, it's those types of specialty or those classifications.
Or if we get more than, we can only house 12 females, so if we get 13, we got to put them somewhere else.
Okay.
I guess also the age of if they're not old enough, they may have to go some other place.
Juvenile,
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about age on the top end. We never had one too old to be housed.
right.
Stay out of jail.
Okay. As you gentlemen, commissioners see that through Brian's, he's helped us a great deal to actually make us go back and revisit. And just like the gym, we actually, once he started kind of putting guidelines, we went on and did the responsible thing and cut some more. But we are being fiscally responsible, and that's what I'm here to do. And I want to tell Anita and Brian the same thing. They are managing it. They are managing us pretty well.
Any other questions on the budget for the jail? All right, Brian?
So on page 265, you have the Communications Division underneath the Sheriff's Office. And so remember on this one, it's 5.6% up, mostly due to software and maintenance and repair of equipment increases. But remember on this one, this is under the Sheriff's communication budget. These are funds that are county funds. There is another budget that is 911 funds that you use restricted 911 funds to pay for. But those are certain items you can pay for. And they're pretty strict on that. You can pay for the equipment to receive the 911 call, process the 911 call, but you can't pay for radio equipment out of 911 funds. Now, we've argued that for years with the powers that be in Raleigh. And it just doesn't go anywhere. But there's a clear delineation of what you can and can't use 911 funds for. So these are county funds that pay for personnel, pay for training. Well, there's some training that go through 911, but other things that the 911 fees will not pay for. So you see personnel fully funded. And again, remember, we've built in the 3.5% COLA on all this. So personnel benefits, the operating is up slightly, and we show that as software and maintenance and then equipment repair increases. There is no capital listed under this because the majority of their capital that they're looking at is covered under the 911 fees. So the total is up 94,000 or 5.6%.
Questions?
Mr. Manager, I was looking at some of the openings that they have, and these openings have transpired over the years. Where does that money go?
You'll have to help me with openings. What do you mean?
You know, like he had 4 in his vacancies.
Lap salary?
Yes. Did that follow him through the incoming year?
So any openings, any lap salaries that you may have at the end of the year roll to fund balance.
Okay.
Which is the same with all departments. Anything anything in the budget, anything that's not spent at the end of the year in the budget rolls to fund balance when we start the new year off.
I was just thinking that it followed on to his new year. That's the reason I asked.
Right. So the way the budget set up is the budget ordinance is specific. If it's not spent by that, and of course as we talk about in the message, we try to discourage and make sure that folks aren't trying to spend their budget down. But any of those funds that are left over roll to fund balance, and then you start a new budget with the new year. So.
Any more questions? You did good. I say you did good.
Thanks.
The group did good. The team did good.
We had a lot of help.
Emergency services, Brian?
Yes, sir. So this one's also broken out by division. So you've got, the first one is the emergency medical services. They're up 161,000 or 4.5%. Again, on page 269 is that budget, or the roll-up of the budget. You got personnel that are fully funded. The benefits, the operating is down. So you're at 415, the operating is down to 449. They've made some operational changes. There is some capital that's included there. I believe there's a vehicle. There's a vehicle, yeah, but it didn't roll over the 5%, so we didn't show vehicle on the summary sheet, but that's where the capital picks up, and there's a vehicle that's being purchased, and you'll see that under capital outlay of vehicles on the detail page on page 270. Any questions? You can emergency medical, sir.
Questions on EMS? John?
Anita?
Yes, sir.
Can you give us the revenue numbers for EMS? In terms of, I know we've got tax revenue and we've got billings revenue.
Yes, so if you go to your detailed revenue sheet
Right.
in the front packet, and if we go towards the back,
Yep.
It's actually going to be the last page at the top. It starts with the fourth line there. We've got our Washington Township District tax. We're estimating to collect $234,000, so that money comes back to the county because we offer the service there. We also run the calls in the Pantego Township area, so we get that district money back in the amount of $203,000 is what we're estimating there. We cover the Bath Township District also, and we're estimating tax revenue of $455,000 there. And we have coverage for EMS for the town of Bellhaven, and they make a direct payment to us equivalent to 5 cents of their tax levy, and that amount is estimated to be $58,000.
Okay,
So that's the district tax revenue for EMS. That's coming back to the general fund because we run the calls in those districts and those areas.
right.
So in addition to that, if you back up on the previous page, actually, we're going to go back 2 pages, and we're going to go to sales and service. Everybody there, and you see that very first line under sales and service is emergency medical service fees of $995,000. That is the revenue that we get from Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance companies and self-pay for actually transporting the individual patients.
Okay, and that's what we're recommending on page 23?
On page 23.
Yeah, under licensing fees and other general revenue. Is the EMS rescue fees?
Let me get page 23. What number are you looking at, Commissioner?
995,000.
Yes. Yes, that is that
Okay.
number.
And then on page, at the bottom of 22 is the EMS general fund tax revenues.
Yes.
950,000.
Yes,
That's the
those,
sum of those 4 districts, right?
exactly, yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So those add to, what, 1,945,000. And so general fund is funding the difference, right? Between the recommended budget of 3.76 million and the
Yes.
revenue stream.
Yes, that would be the subsidy from the general fund, the expenditures minus those 2 numbers we just talked about.
Okay. Okay.
And there might be some residual income still coming in from the Medicaid cost settlement reimbursement. That lags behind 2 or 3 years. If you'll remember, they did away with that program and started paying us an increased transport fee right off the bat for transporting Medicaid patients. But we're still behind, we're not behind in filing those
Okay.
reports, but the state's behind in sending us the money and the reimbursement.
Okay. But, okay, so the general fund, the difference is the 1.8 million, which is to provide the oversight for the total system plus manage our people.
So there are a couple of pieces related to that. Yes, there is oversight of the system itself, the system management piece that we are required as a system provider to take care
Right.
of. That includes all the agencies. Also included with that, if you look at, from a basis of why there's some extra there, it's because we're in places where we normally wouldn't be because of systems because of providers that have gone down. And we've got to be there, so we may not be able to cover from those expenditures that area. And if we had better options on coverage, then it could be more efficient. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're in places
Well-
because we have to be in places, so it costs us a little more money.
Yes.
If we had a clean slate and we redid it, then we could derive some efficiencies out of that and probably drive that number down.
But if you look at, say, whatever, Aurora, the taxpayers in Aurora are paying for oversight for the system, right?
Everyone is.
Yes. But then they're also supplementing the coverage in these areas where we're not really capable of doing it on our own, or the community's not capable.
Correct. And again, that goes back to the fact that if we were to put a system in place that would absolutely maximize the efficiencies, we would be able to drive that number down, because we are filling in holes where agencies have collapsed. We're not able to maximize those efficiencies. So yes, there is some general fund supplement that goes to do that because of that.
Okay.
What's the cost of the 2 quick response units, Chris?
Yes, sir. So based on,
Because we don't get any revenue.
that's correct.
We can't bill for anything we do with
That's correct.
quick response unit.
So on this current fiscal year cost, our cost for each QRV is $349,909. That is, that's $316,000 just in staffing, because again, that's 4 paramedics, 24/7. That's about $7,000 in medical supplies, about $5,000 in maintenance and repair, just over $10,000 in fuel. We pay rent to our fire stations for housing. That's $9,600, and then you have $720 in uniforms, about $350 in cell phone and hotspot connections, and we figure $500 on miscellaneous. So again, that's $700,000 of that subsidy is staffing 2 paramedic trucks to help cover holes, as the manager had referenced, and does not generate a revenue for us. We can't bill, there's very limited billing options you have for the service that truck alone can provide. Now, a lot of those calls do result in a transport by ambulance, which we bill for. But you can't double bill, if that makes sense. Yes, sir. So that's based on the current year's fiscal numbers.
But frequently, the transporting agency may not even be the county.
Could very
Especially
well.
on the south
Yes,
side.
Yes, that's very true. So our QRV that's in Blunts Creek, that's Aurora and Chocowinity that are transporting. So we go and assist with the call. They come, we transfer patient care. They transport the patient to the hospital. They bill for the call, and they get the money for that transport. That does not come back to us. And a good number of the calls on the north side would be in the same ballpark, where a lot of the calls that our Medic 3, our north side QRV runs, is Pinetown. And we're providing that paramedic service for Pinetown as well.
Where's that one located? The north side,
Pinetown?
QRV,
Bath,
Bath.
in the town of Bath.
in the town.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chris.
I
What,
just want to mention that we did do a review of the fees, the transport fees. I
correct.
think it'd be a good time to mention that. It is in the part under the appendix when we go over the fee manual, but we did notice that we looked at the cost of the service per transport, and our fee obviously is not covering that because we do have a subsidy, but we are recommending an increase in the transport fee to try to move that fee over to the patient and get it closer to the actual cost, recouping that cost from the patient, rather than having so much of a subsidy.
You got a question?
it may be the same one that I was waiting to see if he was going to ask.
What I was gonna say is that on those vehicles that you use, the quick, And I think when you put them in place, they was put in place that sometimes when they get there, that we find out the patient don't need to be transported.
In some instances, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
and they are needed for time response and stuff like
That's
that.
correct.
Yeah, I got you.
We've, when you look at EMS coverage and trying to provide a timely response, we got a big county.
Yeah.
We got a big county to cover. And where these QRVs are located, that's one of the gap fields that we try to use to minimize that time.
Okay.
We might not be able to transport them quicker, but we can at least get care to them a little faster.
Okay.
And that's the goal, yes, sir. And most of those patients, when you look at it as a majority or as a whole, most of the patient encounters that we have with our QRVs ultimately get transported by an ambulance. It's more the norm than not, I guess be the easiest way to answer this.
Anyone else?
Would you say you get to a scene quicker than the ambulance, maybe, I bet 75% of the time?
That's a difficult question. Not because the vehicle can run faster, okay? Not for that reason, but it's placement of the vehicle. Especially on the south side, those responses into the Blunt's Creek area, without that QRV being in the Blunt's Creek, you've got a 20-minute run from Chocowinity and 25 to 30 from about that much from Aurora. So it's not necessarily that those QRVs, I know we title them quick response. It's not because they're the race car drivers, right? But we try to keep them positioned in holes in our county to make sure we have a timely response. And those trucks move, particularly our north side captains. Our north side QRV is our shift supervisor. And during the day, they work with all of our county agencies to try to make sure holes are filled throughout the county. So they are, in a lot of cases where we have something that happens very frequently during the day is you'll have Washington EMS on a call, Broad Creek on a call, and Chocowinity on a call all at the same time. And in that case, our QRV is repositioning ambulances and repositioning themselves to try to make sure we have a timely response as much as possible. So it's pretty fluid, and that's what makes it difficult to say, we're getting there faster with a QRV than we are a transport truck. There's a lot more behind the scenes on that.
Jerry?
This is just one of those situations where it's what's best for the people. I mean, you don't like the smell, so you just hold your nose and you continue to do it because it's really necessary. So we're just grateful and thankful that it's in place. I mean, that's all you can do. You can just continue on like you're doing, and maybe one day some money will just fall from heaven and take care of everything.
And that's the case for all of our public safety folks. I think they all have that kind of heart. And I know, coming into this county, that was something Carney emphasized early and often was we help when and where we can help. And that's really the basic expectation. And so I think that's the spirit that all of our public safety folks have. EMS, fire, PD, all of them have that when you really look at it. So I appreciate it.
John?
One last quick question. Do we have any update on Washington's second unit?
No, I'm not. They're still in their budget process as well. So we're just waiting on those things to shape out.
Because I thought they had one order.
Now, their unit is ordered, yes.
Yeah.
They're expecting that in August. As far as staffing the positions, staffing the positions, and putting that truck in service, still waiting on their budget process.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Since I'm not going to be here for the discussion on the expansion, is the EMS conversion at Blunt's Creek, is that off the table now based on?
So we have that included.
Okay.
In system expansion, and look forward to having that conversation with you all, and ultimately the decision is yours. But we have included that again as converting that Blunt's Creek truck from a QRV to a south side. I think, if I'm recalling correctly, depending on revenue adjustments, somewhere around 100,000 if we do tax district adjustments, and 168, I think, if we don't. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, I just was curious whether it was still on the table.
We still have that in, yes, sir.
Okay.
Sure do.
That was my question, so.
We'll have one QRV.
Be the north side supervisor, yes, sir. If that's the case.
But that gives you another revenue stream.
Gives you another revenue, gives you some transport support on the south side. That is an issue that we run into. You know, the frequency that we're having to bring units from the north side to the south side to pick up the patient, it's increasing. Just because it's not necessarily that our calls, we're having more EMS calls. We're having more EMS calls in a general time frame. So the frequency that we have multiple trucks out on a call at the same time is increasing. And sometimes that results in, you know, a Chocowinity being on a call and an Aurora being on a call, and us having to move EMS 7 around to the south side. So again, some of those fluid movements that we try to monitor during the day.
Thank you, Chris.
So if we move on to emergency management, which is a second division under emergency services on page 271. Got one correction for you there. So the budget is up about 31.8%. That's due to a vehicle purchase, but you'll see that doesn't look right when you look at your roll up. So what happened on that, if you on page 272, typically on our line item budgets, capital is the last thing that's on the line item budget. And we added a line item this time for grant expenses. Let me explain that to you. The county receives an emergency management grant from the state for Sarah Title II, right? Sarah Title II stuff, Tier 2, Sarah Tier 2. And we're required to use those funds specifically for support of that. So we actually put that in so it would be easier for us to track that grant funding coming in and us using expenses out of that. So it was easy to track. And when we did that, the roll up missed it. So the numbers should actually be, the personnel is the same, benefits is the same. The operating number, instead of 172,520, should be 102,900. And the capital, instead of 7,600, which is the grant, should be 77,220, and that's a vehicle. So the bottom total is the same, 584,860, but that's why this budget is up, because of a vehicle purchase and vehicle rotation coming out of that office. So happy to answer any questions you have there, and Chris is here to answer any additional you may have.
I think everybody's good.
Okay, so that moves us to the third division, animal control, on page 273. That budget is actually down by 3.5%. Personnel is fully funded, benefits fully funded. The operating, as you'll see on page 273, is up slightly, but overall, because we don't have a capital expense this year, I believe we replaced a vehicle last year, that total budget is down by about $18,252. You have the line item detail on page 274. Answer any questions you may have.
Anyone? Forestry?
Okay, so on page 275, and as you're aware, we have a contract with the state of North Carolina, with the North Carolina Forestry Service, where they provide the services and we have a cost share with them. That is funded at a rate of 60% by the state and 40% by the county under our cooperative agreement. They submit to us their budget. And we essentially slide in that 40%. It has gone up this year by about 19.5%. Traditionally, this budget is kind of always up a little bit, but the good news about the Forestry Service is they don't act like normal state state departments. When they don't need to spend it, they don't spend it. So our hope is that there's not a large fire that occurs, because if there's not a large fire that occurs, they don't spend a whole lot of money. So we don't reimburse as much. But we go ahead and fully fund them based on their requested budget to keep their operations whole. But again, they don't typically, unless something happens where they've got a big fire to fight in the county, we don't end up spending that entire budget.
So do we get any information about why the budget's climbing? I mean, it's actually up, in
It's
3
if you
years,
start-
it's gone up 34%.
If you'll look on page 277, you'll see they're figuring a 3% raise. The state health band benefit was increased. Their retirement is increased. They have some additional for on-call to require compensation for employees who have to remain available and on-call. And then they've got a vehicle replacement. And you see the vehicles that were requested. They did not request one in 22-23 or 23-24. So they're requesting a 1-ton 4-wheel drive pickup for a mechanic's body is requested in 24-25.
Okay.
So the district forester presents that, and you have that information there. And in fact, you have their entire budget. They provide the entire budget for you.
Do you have anything else, John? Anyone else? Other emergency services?
Okay, this is on page 283, and under other emergency services, you have the Sydney Dive Team, which the board has historically funded. That's funded at the same amount as you did last year of $12,500. There's a funding for the Volunteer Fire Department Fire Safety House at $3,500. That Fire Safety House provides hands-on learning tool for children to help them understand what they need to do in the event of a fire in their home. And that's moved around to different events and looked after. So we help with funding for that to maintain that asset. And then the medical examiner statute requires that when there is a suspicious death, that the medical examiner is involved in that case, and the state and the county is responsible for paying that. Those fees have gone up this year. I don't think we included the letter, but they essentially almost doubled for us, or did double for us. The piece of that is we share with the state on that. I think we pay a little more than the state pays, but both of our percentages went up almost double. So that's what that increase is for, the medical examiner fees. And it really depends on how many suspicious death cases we get. Some years we have more, some years we have less, but it's a reimbursable basis. So we feel like we've got to extrapolate and put the numbers in to cover. And generally what we say is about 15% of all deaths are considered suspicious.
Isn't the medical examiner, has it been moved to the Greenville office?
I think they do handle it out of the Greenville office.
It used to be here in the county, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think it's always
It's always
gone back to it's over at the med school. I
Med
think.
school.
Special revenues?
Okay, so moving into the special revenue side, and this gives you got two pieces. If you want to see the summary rolls up on page 29. But we also go into the details on page 287. We touched briefly on this. The detailed information about the different funds themselves. On page 285, we have the 911 telephone system. That is the restricted revenue that's used for the expenses associated with the PSAP. You'll see on page 29, it's expected at revenues at 177,513 and expenditures at 177,513. We are anticipating appropriating $17,784 in restricted fund balance for 911. So we're anticipating receiving $159,729 in 911 surcharges. We propose to appropriate $17,784 in 911 restricted fund balance for a total of $177,513 to match our anticipated expenditures from that. Any questions?
Under the EMS Special Revenue Fund expenditures, I'm confused on this $300,000 recommended number when we did not have that in '24.
Okay, you got to get me to a number. What page?
Okay, it's on page 291, Brian, I'm sorry, 291.
On page 290.
Under it's on 291, and it's about halfway down. It's DHHS-IGT fees.
Okay.
There's 269,000 in '23, 0 in '24, and in 25, we're coming back to 300,000.
Yeah. So remember earlier this evening, I mentioned that Medicaid cost settlement report stuff changed? And the state pays us, I guess this all came along with Medicaid expansion in North Carolina. So now they're paying us the truer or near the truer cost of the transport, like $1,900 and some dollars, I believe the number is, for $2,100. Okay, it's gone up a little bit. Rather than paying us, say, before, $700 or $800, and then at the end of the year, we'd have to file to the state.
Right.
And if they had any money left over in the pot, then they would send us our portion of that to try to make us whole to what our actual cost was. Well, all that changed, and part of that, when that changed, with us getting that $2,100 now initially with the transport fee, is we owe a fee back to the state that totals $300,000 for
I got you.
managing all that. So that's what that is,
Processing fee.
processing fees. So they found a way to keep part of the money
That's right.
anyway, bottom line.
It's fine. Exactly right.
So the 2,100 is inflated. You got to turn around and pay the $300,000 out of that total.
That's right. And those are done, so the way those changes are happening now, those reconciliations, those transfer fees are paid on monthly installments now. So as we get that EMS billing money in, those are fees that are processed monthly. Melissa was actually working on them today, so it's pretty intense.
Any other questions on the special revenue budget? Okay, ready for the water enterprise?
Okay. Yes, sir. Let's get there. We'll make sure there weren't any questions on that one. All right, so starting on page 293, you have the water department. And remember, these are, actually, let me back up. If you don't mind, let's talk real quickly, just so you're aware, because the fire chiefs are here. In our budget, there was, and as I spoke to you about in the message, there was a request from the Northside Fire Chiefs to recommend a 1 cent tax increase in the Northside fire tax. And I put that in the budget as a recommended piece in the budget. So it's funded in the budget. Wanted to let you reiterate that. I did show that to you in the message. And essentially just remember that, so 1 penny on $100,000 worth of valuation is $10 a year. So, and the need from the Northside Fire Chiefs is, as I talked about in the budget message, was they're facing obviously some inflation pressures, especially on their capital side, and they needed some additional funding to be able to do that. They got together as a group, they worked through that, they had unanimous consent to bring that forward, and that's not always been the case. As just to let you know, to their benefit, they're a tough group when it comes to asking the Board of Commissioners to increase taxes. They recognize the impact that has. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was a discussion about whether they needed to do that, and they got together and they said no. Some said, yes, we want it. Some said, no, we can work it out, and they worked it out amongst themselves. So it's not just a willy-nilly thing. They spent a lot of time working on that and a lot of time making sure that what they wanted to bring forward was the right thing to do to support that operation. So that's in there, and wanted to recognize them for being here tonight.
So that's the increase on page 287 on the north side fire tax?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So that's 340,000? Over, oh, I'm sorry. It's over what was recommended. On 287, under north side fire tax? Went from 1,050,000 to 1,391,000.
340,000. That's what you said it.
That is the additional.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought it was generated a little more extra money than that, but yes, that's what they calculated out, but yes.
Okay.
Right, so, and just again on that, it depends upon what the final valuation numbers are.
Right.
And we're still in the process of
Yes.
doing that. Y'all are still here in appeals, I think, and so we'll finalize it. But when bills go out, the number will be what the number is. That's our estimate right
That's an
now.
estimate.
I had it at 321.
Okay.
I'm not sure going back in history, but I think in the last 10 years, there's not been an increase, has there? Has there been an increase since the North Side Fire District was set up?
Yes.
Yes, and I think there's been one since I've been here. This would be the second. I've been here 9 years. And it was it was 1 penny.
Went to 4.1. That's right. And I believe that was 2018? 17 or 18. It's been a while.
And the max is what? 5?
So I think that's a loaded question, depending on how the district's set up, so I'll let the manager explain.
Yeah, so the EMS fees are maxed out at 5 cents per district. There's a difference in the fire taxes. They're higher, and I don't want to quote them to you sitting here.
It's $1.50.
If they are, there's one if they are established by voter referendum, and then there's one if they're established by Board of Commission action. The north side was put in place by Board of Commission action. The south side were by voter referendum, and then there's one on the north side that was voter referendum. Bunyan was voter referendum, but y'all took that one to zero when you laid on top of it the north side fire tax to fund everybody. So the ones that are voter referendum, everything total can't be any more than $1.50, but I don't remember exactly what the other is, but we're nowhere close to it. And I would say to you too, and I'll be happy to share that with you, and we probably should have shared it ahead of time. There was a study that was recently done by the North Carolina Firemen's Association. We have a copy of that study that breaks out, Chris has got it with him right there, that breaks out the support for volunteer agencies across the state, whether they are, how it's done, what the amounts are. They break it out by Western, Central, and Eastern because there are some differences in geography, obviously. Fire trucks don't go as fast uphill in the mountains as they do, other places. It's supposed to be a joke. They go downhill a lot. They go downhill a lot faster in the mountains. But they show those numbers, and you'll be very surprised that our numbers are extremely low compared to the comparisons, the averages you look at across North Carolina as a whole and as North Carolina Eastern. So you got some folks who are really making really good use of the funds they make, and they're supplementing that by doing community benefits, whether they're cooking pigs or cooking chickens or having shotgun,
And grants.
Turkey shoots.
So they're doing a fantastic job.
Since they're here, what's the situation going on with recruiting volunteers? Does anybody want to comment on that?
This is what happens when you become president.
Well, the concern is that we've heard that you continue to have difficulty It is.
recruiting people?
It's very difficult, and I'm not blaming it on this younger generation, but the volunteerism and the volunteer mentality is not what it was even 10, 15 years ago. When I was coming up joining the fire department over 30 years ago, it was very prideful to be in the fire department or the EMS, especially a volunteer squad. But it's just not the same mentality nowadays. We're doing things, I know other departments are doing things as well, from a social media standpoint, from just creating an awareness and a desire in some of the younger generation to get involved, and it doesn't have to be the younger generation either. We encourage anybody from 15 to 100. I mean, we'd be glad to have anybody involved in the fire service and the volunteer departments in Beaufort County. But it's, we're doing what we feel like we can through different venues or different arenas to generate this interest. And so we are, it's a constant battle. We're looking at, all the time looking at different resources, different angles, I guess you might say, to try to reach new volunteers. And it's a constant battle. Again, it's not as easy as it once was to get them in and to recruit them. Part of that, part of the expense or the increased money we're looking at is part of that is outfitting, our members. From the cost of turnout gear to air packs to even workman's comp insurance. I mean, those expenses have gone up exponentially over the last 15, 20 years. So that's one reason we're coming before you guys to increase this, or ask for this increase. But recruitment is a constant thing. We're going to keep the doors open in a volunteer capacity just as long as we can. I think for the most part, in talking with some of the other fire chiefs, I think most of us are okay as far as our numbers. We're required to keep a certain amount on the roster because of our fire ratings and through the Department of Insurance. So most of us are in good shape. There's some that are struggling a little bit. Like I say, we're doing everything that we can to try to increase that recruitment and retention as well. So, but yeah, we're working at it.
Okay. I know you are.
Well, your cost definitely has gone up. I mean, everything you touch, you're not isolated. If things go up on an annual basis of 8% or 6%, you get affected too.
And I can share some of those with you again, as the manager was saying, this has been a work in progress now for a while. And I do have to take a moment to brag on our fire departments and the fire chiefs. A lot of people in the community may not know, but the fire chiefs get together every other month. And we talk about just operational challenges, what the future is going to look like, and how do we position ourselves now to ensure those services continue in the future. And, I tell them all the time, they're probably tired of hearing it. There's not many counties that you can say that for. I'm just, I'm being very honest. This is a very competitive world, right? Particularly with fire departments. There's a lot of pride, as the chief would say. And sometimes agencies can work well together and other times they don't. And we're very blessed in Beaufort County to have fire departments that work well together. And they're getting together frequently and they're working through these challenges and try to figure out how do we collectively overcome them. And we started, for this year, we try to set goals each year of things we want to accomplish. And in this year, we started that with just tasking our chiefs. Let's pretend we're looking at a crystal ball and imagining what your department is going to look like 3 to 5 years from now. And what do you think your biggest challenges are going to be? And overwhelmingly, the top 2 challenges was staffing and money. And they, in some ways, kind of go hand in hand. To kind of speak to what the manager was talking about and where we compare to tax rates across the state. So the average fire tax in North Carolina is 8.7. Right now, we're at 4.1 on the north side, 4.3 on the south side. That's currently. This would carry us to 5.1 and 4.3 on the south side. In the east, that average is 7.6. So as a whole, our departments are providing a very good service at a very good value. And we're seeing the return on that investment, where North Carolina, they try to do it on about at every 4-year cycle, but the offices, the Department of Insurance will come in and inspect fire departments. And they have to do certain things, and that determines your insurance rating, which impacts your homeowner's insurance. Over the last 2 years, our departments have fallen into that rotation, and all of our departments have lowered their rates. The majority of our departments now are at a 6, so 10 being the worst, 1 being the best. Most of our departments at a 6, and for your residential homeowners, that's the best rating you can get for your insurance. Anything below that doesn't make any changes on the residential side, and it impacts commercial, but not for a homeowner. So, you know, when we talk about tax increases, I think we owe it to ourselves to mention that our citizens are getting a return on investment with this. And as the manager was saying, no one ever wants to talk about raising the tax to a citizen, because we're all feeling different burdens, you know, in today's world. And the last thing we want to do is complicate that. But we are getting a return on investment. Some of the challenge that these departments face, again, goes to the cost of operating, right? So just some quick numbers, some common expenses you see in a fire department. Just the gear, the pants, the coat, helmet that a firefighter has to have in order to be on the roster. In 2014, you could get a set of gear for $2,300. In 2019, it went to $2,900. This year, it's $4,200. Right? And air packs that we have to have. In 2014, it was $7,100. In 2019, it was $8,400. This year, it's $10,000. Fire trucks. Where we see a big difference, right? I'm not talking about the bells and whistle fire trucks, right? These are your standard conventional cab, you know, standard truck. In 2014, it was $295,000. In 2019, I'm sorry, 2014 was $280,000. 2019 was $325,000. This year's $500,000. So that was one of the challenges that our departments and our chiefs have been trying to figure out. How do we overcome these challenges of staffing and capital replacement? Do that with the best use of our money as possible, and start looking down the road at what do we need to put in place now so that we're in a better position, you know, 3, 5, 10 years from now. And just super proud for that group for having those honest conversations. And it means a lot. You don't find that very often. So I appreciate you guys for being here.
Chris, you may want to talk about the effort we put forth to try to get grant money, so we're not
Yes.
relying on the county commissioners. We go to Raleigh, sit down
That's
with
right.
our representatives, try to get funding from there. It's just not local funding, because it's looking at.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You know, these departments are very active in fundraisers. They're also very active in pursuing grants. And just about every department every year is utilizing multiple grants, whether that's the State Fire Association grant, or the state grant, which is a 50-50, forestry grant, which is a matching fund, AFG, which is a total funding. Blunt's Creek's had some success with direct funding from local legislators lately. So, you know, they're exhausting all efforts to fill that financial gap as much as possible. We've been fortunate in the last couple of years with some COVID relief money, especially in Plum River. They've benefited from some of the state initiatives from that. But, you know, that's grant money. It's never guaranteed. And so we're going to continue to pursue it. But we do want to make sure we're trying to stay ahead of this curve as much as possible. It's been difficult.
Anybody else have a question? Thank you guys for what you do every day.
Thank you guys for your support too.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to Water Fund. So as you recall, there are two enterprise funds in Beaufort County. Enterprise funds, for those who may not, are listening, may not know what enterprise funds mean. They are funds that are not using general fund tax dollars, so there are no tax dollars going to those. They are operated like private businesses where the user fees pay the entire cost of the service. So we're recovering user fees to pay the entire cost of all the expenses and capital and future needs. So the water fund, starting on page 293, you remember there are 7 independent water districts. They were, the first district was formed back in 1989. They are still independent districts, although we combined them as one for billing and for operations because we ran into some challenges with the LGC, the way they were looking at it. So we wanted to bring them all together. We did that several years ago. All the rates across all the districts are uniform. It took us 3 or 4 years to get to that, so that everything was uniform across all the districts. This year, the recommended budget for the water fund is $9.2 million. That does include a 3% increase in rates from the prior year due to inflation pressures. It was not increased last year, so we were able to go all last year without a rate increase, but just needed to be able to do that this time. We do continue the 10-year capital improvement plan that was put in place in fiscal year 18-19 to be able to look long-term at our assets and make sure we're looking after those and replacing those as needed. The budget recommends $158,000 in capital, and there is contingency funded at $126,429. So happy to answer any questions you may have on the water fund budget. The details on page 290, starting on page 295.
John?
What's our current reserve in the water fund?
10.9 million.
Yep. So the current fund balance in that is 10.9 million.
I sent Anita an email this afternoon. 10.9 million.
Keeps up with these numbers.
I know.
Now, that was as of June the 30th of 23. That was the actual audit number
Oh, that's the audit number.
for 23.
Okay.
But we're in full gear now, making the payments on the water system based on the numbers I'm seeing.
Yeah, there was
Principal and interest payments.
right. There was some front end loading to try to be able to manage that in the out years to make sure we had enough to cover that debt service.
So is the debt service showing here?
Yeah, if you look on 294, under debt service, you can see in 23, it was 705,000, and then the recommended number is 3 million.
I'm looking at revenues, yeah.
We were only making interest payments, I'm assuming, in 23 when that.
So my guess there is what actually happened is with enterprise funds, you do full accrual year-end journal entries and you take the principal payment out of the budgetary part and apply it to the note on the balance sheet. So what you're seeing here as the 705 is just the interest piece for fiscal year 22-23.
Okay. But in 25, that's principal and interest.
That's right, yes.
We still have roughly 14,000 customers. Anyone else? All right, you want to move to the solid waste?
Yes, sir. So on page 299 starts the solid waste piece. Again, it is an enterprise fund, so we're recovering we're recovering user fees to pay for all the cost. The recommended budget is $4.6 million. It includes a increase of $8 in the solid waste fee. That solid waste fee is applied on the tax bill. It is not a tax, it is a fee, but we are allowed to put it on the tax bill and collect it that way. So it's an increase of $8, recommended increase of $8 to 180, so it'll be a total of 188, and that's to offset the increased cost of solid waste disposal and inflation that we run into, as well as the board's action at the previous meeting to open the Flanders Filters Road transfer station for 4 hours every Saturday to be able to receive waste, specifically construction and demolition debris that is not available, that previously has not been available on the weekends. We don't take C&D at the sites, so if you had to dispose of C&D, you'd have to go to the transfer station to do that, and the transfer station was not open on the weekends. So the board made the decision at the previous board meeting to fund that. We put that in the budget, but just a reminder, that funding is only to operate and have the transfer station open for those 4 hours every Saturday. People who go there will still have to pay, cross the scales and pay the fee. Now, you also recall that a couple years ago, the Republic Service agreed that they would take the actual weight and multiply it. It was to make sure that you were just being charged for the actual weight. What else do we do? You have a evaluation after 6 months. That was a piece that was added to it to make sure that you evaluated it in 6 months to ensure that you still wanted to do that. We have budgeted for the full year simply because we have to. We won't have to come back in the middle. But if you decided you didn't want to continue, we would just move those funds off to the side. We do continue to charge the administrative fee where on both the water and the solid waste, where they are paying their share of general fund expenses. So expenses that are associated like with finance department for services that we provide, for general fund services that are provided to the enterprise funds, they pay us back for that, because otherwise you would be supplementing with tax dollars, and we don't do that. There's also the continuation of the engineering studies for the proposed mega sites on the north and south side of the river. They'll be brought back to you. I think we're at the point now where they're doing geotech surveys, studies to make sure that the proposed property is suitable. So, but happy to answer any questions. Public Works Director is here if you have any questions relating to that. $1.6 million in fund balance.
John just asked me. I've got a question. Under revenue, we show $83,000 for scrap tire disposal. And under the expense, we show $300,000. Are we not charging enough? I mean, shouldn't,
We don't get to charge for receiving scrap tires. We're mandated to take those. And that's an argument that we have every year with the state trying to get that increased. Wes could probably talk to you at length about that.
so
The fees charged at the time of sale.
The 83,000 is the amount the state sends us back.
and that's based on the sales of new tires.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's saying we're getting rid of tires faster than we buy new tires, I guess.
$2 a tire, something like that.
Well, there's also the fact that you can bring tires, I mean, you can bring tires from anywhere.
Right.
We're mandated to take them. So they may be, I don't think they are, but you could bring a tire in the back of your truck and bring it from the mountains and bring it down here. We have to take it.
not on the rim.
That's correct. As long as that tire generates in North Carolina, if it comes from Murphy, we have to take it for free.
You've got to take it.
And honestly, on the reimbursement side, I would guess that the state's probably keeping a portion of that for themselves.
You know not.
I
You
think
know,
so.
you know not, Anita.
And I mean, I'm sorry to butt in. I mean, the chance is there that it's a very slim chance that tires are coming from out of state. All they have to do is fill out a form that said they're in North Carolina. And we're trusting that. It's just filling out the certification form. There's really no way to verify some things like that.
But this is strictly for the Hawkins Beach site.
Yes.
That's the only place
We have a trailer at Colony Tire in Aurora that they utilize for just their business. Citizens don't go there.
The disposal of scrap tires really is a hot topic in North Carolina, all across from Manio to Murphy. You may have seen in some of your emails or some of your updates, there was proposed legislation not sure if it was the last session or the session before that, where it actually had a little bit of traction and they thought that some things might be changed, but then it was taken out at the end. But again, that's something that when the representatives and legislative members ask you if there's something that they could help with, that would be a huge help. Because again, we, obviously, with us being a tier 1 county, and we have a smaller retail market, so we are not, as much taxes not being collected on the sale of new tires, but we have a large secondary used tire market. So that means that people are purchasing used tires, so we haven't gotten the tax off of that, but then we still have to do the disposal of it. So in my opinion, that is something that could be changed that would benefit us. But again, it's all across the state. When Wes and I went to Raleigh, the number of tires that are at that collection site is just nonstop. I mean, they are filling up tractor trailer loads constantly. But that's definitely something that the state as a whole and the solid waste associations are looking at and trying to figure out if there's potentially a better way to do it. Because like everything else, the cost of disposal is increasing.
And disposal options are very minimal.
The number of parcels that we're collecting, the $180, is that 22,000 and some change?
I didn't know you were directing that to me. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, the number of parcels that we collect,
Yes, sir.
the $180.
Yes.
One time it was
It's
a
about-
little over
It's
22,000,
about 23.
23.
Are we collecting that on summer residents? Everything that looks like a residence?
Everything that has the ability to generate refuge. So even, and y'all may have heard some grief, I mean, even churches, parsonages,
Yeah.
all those. We don't do it on vacant land or structures that have a verified contract with a provider where they're paying the full rate.
I think our ordinance language, Christine, and maybe we can remember this, is an improved and habitable structure.
That's what, that was my question, for some of them houses, I asked some question that people had lived in houses for years, but you answered it.
Any other questions on solid waste?
Okay, that takes us to page 309, which is the Internal Service Fund. As you recall, we established that Internal Service Fund two years ago. And this is our workers' compensation fund. We have a $1.2 million target. For that, what we did was we increased our deductible for workers' comp to $100,000 per incident. And we started setting aside money to be able to pay for that. We are still covered for extreme issues, but this has helped us drive down that premium cost. So you'll see $200,000 comes from the general fund and is moved over into the internal service fund. You also have payments from the water fund because we have obviously employees associated with that as well. So any of our employees, money comes over from those funds to support that workers' compensation fund.
Once again, that goal is 1.2 million fund balance.
Yes, and I believe at the end of this fiscal year, come June 30th, we'll probably have about 875,000 saved. So we're getting pretty near that 1.2 million.
Okay, you want to go to capital projects?
Yes, sir. So on page 311, this is the Capital Projects Fund. This is where you take the 1 penny and set it aside that the board agreed to several years ago. So we're transferring in to that from general fund $640,000, which is our estimate of 1 penny. You'll see that under the improvements, we're showing building improvements, and that's detailed on page 312. The courthouse replacement of 2 boilers, seaboard painting and flooring, Tideland painting and flooring. We've thrown in some additional for inflation, 15% inflation factor. And then also you'll see where we've done we've set aside $78,000 for construction management services We've been challenged in being able to get projects completed for several reasons. And we hope that what we'd be able to do is accelerate some of these projects by engaging not an FTE, but engaging an engineering firm to assist us with project management, where they'd be able to focus on that and help us move through these projects and get them completed a little quicker, so we can catch up and get those done. So that's your proposed capital projects for the 1 penny for this year.
I have a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You got an inflationary factor of 15%. What is that? How did you arrive at 15%?
So that was just a general thought in looking at our numbers. You want to speak to that any at all?
As I recall, the quotes had a little age on them, maybe 18 months in some cases. We felt 15% would be appropriate to add.
Yes, because there are a couple of, actually, there are 3 projects that I currently have pricing on, but they're above the budget that we originally had set. And again, the budgets that were here, again, we're so far in the future, we're not exactly sure of what the scope was at the time that was originally set. But that, again, was to help to cover some of the quotes that are coming in now, because as we know, things are increasing. So while it may be 3%, maybe the average, I would say the construction costs have been above that 3%, but way above that 3%.
Yeah, so you think 15% is justifiable?
Yeah, absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay.
And you'll see that in the next couple of months as I bring recommendations to award based upon quotes that we have received. We'll need to make some transfers.
I just finished a job that was quoted 2 years ago, still had it, the information, and just completed the job, and it was up 16% in 2 years.
Yes, sir. I believe that.
16% in 2 years.
Yes, sir.
This is asphalt, that's one now.
Yeah, I didn't need asphalt.
What is this construction management service?
So what it is, what we would do is we would engage an engineering firm or a project management firm to be able to provide somebody for us on a contract basis, not on an FTE basis. So we're not paying benefits or anything like that. It's not adding a position to us. It's contracting with a provider to help us with that service, so they could be on site and manage that to help supplement the workload that we need to be able to accomplish those and get those called up.
And the total budget year is $640,000.
The total budget, everything together equals the 1 penny, which we're estimated is $640,000, 1 penny.
Now, how much do we have in that we hadn't completed money? Is that the total budget, or we have?
That's the total for just this year. That's the 1 penny for this year. We do have that. The reason we have the project management piece in there that we'd like to add is because we have some projects from prior years that we've not been able to complete yet, and we want to be able to try to accelerate those a little bit.
And what are the projects we had?
I can't answer them off the top of my head. Christina can answer this for you.
Trust me, I know them well. The interior of the courthouse, the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office interior improvements, the BHM exterior, the cupola repair, and then the basement gel improvements, and then there are the others from last year, which is the admin roof replacement.
Okay, so we have the $1,359,000 to do that work.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Those funds have been set aside. Yes, sir.
And that's the other reason for having that 15% inflationary number in there.
I'm just saying inflationary, but I just can't understand somebody spending that kind of money with her. Tell us to do the work.
A lot of working to provide a consistency through the projects to help to complete those.
I got you.
So how confident do you feel about the numbers in the, like 2020 ADA?
Washing machine.
Well, with the ADA and again with the others, those are, that's part of what that 15% is for.
Okay, that's not just for the new list.
Oh, no, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. That's to help to cover the cost for the others. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, as you know, through the study that was done and the reason that the board made this decision to continually improve the buildings is because there's more work than the funds available. So again, we prioritize and then move our way down.
And I think the construction management is really not a new thing. You've hired people before, right?
Yes, sir.
To do this type of thing.
We did, but it was through the general fund, not through the capital fund. Previously, the capital fund was only for the actual project work. Since the beginning of this fund being created, it had not been used to provide labor services other than, design services for engineering. But this is actually setting aside part of the actual 1 cent to be able to use in order to diligently perform the project.
Any other questions on the capital? I guess we're down to our closure.
Yes, sir. So, unless there's anything else you'd like to discuss, your next meeting is Thursday. That is when we'll do service expansions and outside agencies. You have that as your next folder as you go in, 313. One thing I will say, there is an expansion, two things actually. We missed the Agape funding because you took that out of last year's budget one time. And because it came out of last year's budget, typically when it comes out, we don't put it back in. But we missed that it was one-time reduction, so we forgot to put that back in. We'll get that back in under outside agencies. And then the Boys and Girls Club has asked for some additional funding. It is actually not shown in the service expansion, but it's actually shown under youth services, which is where they are, which is where they're funded, and it shows that there. But we'll make sure we get that clear with you when we go through service expansions. But that's scheduled for Thursday night. You'll have departments here to pitch those presentations to you. You'll have outside agencies. And remember, it's agencies that are asking for new funding or additional funding from what they received in the prior year. So that's all we have unless you have more. Commissioner Langley, I have 626.
That's very good. And
Was that a bet?
I can roll it. I will not be here Thursday night, so Vice Chairman Jerry Langley has agreed to preside over that. So we're going to recess until Thursday night at 5 p.m. Good evening.